The people who will ultimately betray you rarely look like enemies. In fact, they are usually the ones bowing the lowest and smiling the brightest. We are taught to fear overt hostility, but true danger wears the mask of absolute devotion until the exact moment your downfall becomes profitable. This fatal misunderstanding of human nature is solved only through a strict framework of Machiavellian vigilance. Today, we're going to strip away the illusions of forced loyalty and expose the hidden indicators of incoming treachery. Prepare to shift your perspective from a vulnerable spectator to a ruthless grandmaster who sees the trap long before it snaps shut. Now, let's unlock the secrets. Before we dissect the first profound shift in human behavior, I want you to make a definitive commitment to your own strategic protection. Type the word unshakable in the comments right now to signal that you are no longer willing to be a blind piece on someone else's board, letting this very moment mark the reclamation of your psychological edge. The first warning sign of an impending betrayal manifests as calculated excessive deference, a psychological fog designed to blind your survival instincts. In the theater of dark psychology, this is known as strategic love bombing or predatory compliance. It occurs when an individual in your social circle, your professional environment, or even your inner sanctuary suddenly amplifies their praise, echoes your opinions without hesitation, and aggressively validates your ego, even when you commit obvious tactical blunders. Observe the predator who enters a high-stakes environment. They do not strike immediately. Instead, they study you, hunting for your deepest emotional hunger, which is almost always the desire for absolute validation. Once they locate this vulnerability, they feed it relentlessly. They become the echo chamber to your thoughts, laughing a bit too intensely at your jokes and treating your minor achievements as historical triumphs. Beneath this suffocating layer of devotion, however, a sinister mechanism is at play. The manipulator is actively lowering your psychological defenses. By inflating your ego, they ensure that your focus shifts inward, away from their hidden maneuvers. An ego blinded by self-importance is entirely incapable of reading the room or sensing danger. Niccolò Machiavelli exposed this dark truth with absolute clarity in his masterwork, The Prince, writing that there is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. But the manipulator has no intention of telling you the truth. They recognize that the truth breaks the illusion, whereas flattery deepens the hypnotic trance. By withholding reality from you, they are systematically keeping you in an intellectual coma, ensuring that when they finally withdraw the matrix of support, your fall is absolute and irreversible. To dismantle this dark psychological trap, you must weaponize counterintuition. You must deliberately introduce a flawed, slightly absurd idea into your next private discussion, presenting it with quiet confidence. If they eagerly swallow the bait and praise your genius rather than providing a calculated correction, you have successfully identified a performative actor. Furthermore, you must quietly track their behavior when authority figures are missing. If they instantly transform from subservient worshippers into venomous critics of others, know with mathematical certainty that they are rehearsing the exact same betrayal for you. Finally, you must plant an artificial boundary on a completely trivial matter and observe their micro-expressions. A sudden, unscripted flash of resentment in their eyes reveals the absolute malice they are working so hard to suppress behind their mask of praise. Moving deeper into the dark calculus of human nature, the second sign is the subtle shift in the leverage matrix, signaled by a sudden decline in their psychological and material dependency. In the realm of Machiavellian realism, loyalty is never an inherent virtue or a permanent emotional state. It is a dynamic equation dictated entirely by utility leverage and shifting incentives. You will watch this pattern emerge when a long-term associate, a trusted protege, or a secondary partner quietly secures an alternative source of power, validation, or financial independence. For months or years, this individual may have displayed unwavering loyalty, executing your commands and defending your name against all external threats. However, this loyalty was never driven by genuine affection. It was an evolutionary survival mechanism, because your shadow was the only place they could receive protection and resources. The exact moment they acquire the tools, the network, or the capital to survive independently, the dynamic undergoes a chilling transformation. You will notice a sudden cooling of their emotional temperature. Their responses to your inquiries become slow, brief, and purely transactional. They no longer seek your counsel, and they display a quiet indifference to your strategic direction. The dark psychology behind this is clear. When an individual no longer requires your influence to guarantee their survival, the cost of betraying you drops to absolute zero, while the reward for discarding you skyrockets. Machiavelli laid bare this brutal law of human mechanics in Chapter 17 of The Prince, stating that, "For love is held by a chain of obligation, which, because men are wretched, is broken every time their own self-interest is at stake." The chain of obligation is not a bond of the heart, it is a weight of dependency. When the predator cuts the weight, the chain shatters. They realize that maintaining an alliance with you requires an investment of resources that they could now use to build their own empire. Therefore, your continued existence at the top becomes an obstacle to their ultimate ambition. To protect your sovereignty against this structural shift, you must perform a cold, unemotional audit of every relationship in your circle. You must accurately map out what they extract from you and actively determine if the market now offers them an alternative pipeline. To guarantee their permanent compliance, you must ensure that you retain exclusive, unreplicable control over a core asset, whether it is a vital piece of proprietary knowledge, an irreplaceable relationship, or a specific systemic access that they can neither copy, bypass, nor steal. You must transition the relationship entirely away from an emotional illusion of past gratitude into a continuous, forward-looking, transactional framework where their future rewards remain strictly dependent on your survival. The third indicator brings us to the sinister practice of asymmetric information harvesting, where the predator actively disarms you while cloaking themselves in total shadow. In any true alliance, the symmetric exchange of data ensures safety, but a traitor preparing an execution will systematically violate this balance. You will observe this when a close collaborator suddenly becomes intensely curious about your deep vulnerabilities, your hidden financial liabilities, your private legal disputes, or your ultimate long-term blueprints, while simultaneously pulling a dense veil of secrecy over their own daily operations. They will manipulate casual environments, inviting you to late-night drinks or intimate conversations, adopting a posture of deep empathy to encourage you to confess your anxieties and structural weaknesses. They nod, they comfort, and they collect every detail. Yet the moment you reverse the lens and question them about their own upcoming moves, their independent projects, or their private meetings, they retreat into defensive ambiguity, offering vague, non-committal phrases or quickly redirecting the focus back to you. This is a highly calculated, dark psychological maneuver designed to create an information monopoly. By transforming themselves into an enigma while turning you into an open book, they are building a perfect targeting map for their impending strike. They know your triggers, your pressure points, and your panic thresholds, while you possess absolutely no leverage to counterattack. Machiavelli deeply understood that information is the ultimate prerequisite for dominance, advising that a prince must always be a great asker and a patient hearer of the truth. However, when a manipulator uses this strategy against you, they are not acting as a protector. They are acting as a parasite, siphoning your strategic intelligence to feed your future rivals. To break this information monopoly, you must instantly execute a protocol of strategic opacity. You must place the individual on an immediate information starvation diet, feeding them nothing but dry, publicly verifiable facts and entirely mundane details. When they deploy their empathetic probing techniques, you must immediately reverse the pressure, forcing them to thoroughly explain their own strategies, timelines, and secret alignments before you utter a single syllable of your own data. To confirm their treachery beyond a shadow of a doubt, you must feed them a highly specific, entirely harmless piece of synthetic, confidential misinformation. If that unique piece of toxic data leaks back to external forces or competitive entities within a matter of days, you have acquired absolute empirical proof of their betrayal without sustaining a single scratch. The fourth pattern is the covert nesting with emerging power centers, a classic double-agent maneuver executed by individuals who sense a shift in the wind. Long before a traitor openly declares war or walks away from your alliance, they will quietly begin hedging their risks by building secret pipelines to your direct rivals, your bitter enemies, or to authority figures who stand to gain the most from your eventual erasure. This treachery manifests through small, anomalous deviations in their established behavioral baseline. You might discover that a trusted lieutenant has been holding undocumented late-night phone calls with an aggressive competitor, or quietly attending private social circles hosted by individuals who are openly hostile to your brand. When confronted with these anomalies, the manipulator will invariably unleash a highly rationalized defense using gaslighting techniques to make you feel paranoid. They will claim they are simply gathering external intelligence for the benefit of your shared alliance, or that they are merely maintaining professional networking options. The dark psychological reality, however, is that they have already conducted a cold-blooded evaluation of your momentum. They have calculated that your power has reached its zenith and is beginning to stall, or they have detected an internal vulnerability in your infrastructure that makes your downfall inevitable. Rather than staying to help fortify your position, their predatory survival instinct commands them to use your resources, your access, and your secrets to purchase their entry ticket and secure a high-ranking position within the enemy's camp. They are actively maintaining a dual identity, operating as a virus inside your system, while swearing allegiance to the external host. Machiavelli issued an absolute warning against tolerating these divided loyalties, writing that he who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined. By allowing an associate to maintain undocumented alignments with your rivals, you are literally subsidizing the construction of the gallows upon which you will be hanged. To neutralize this covert defection, you must act with cold, absolute authority. You must establish non-negotiable compliance protocols that categorize any undocumented external strategic communication as an immediate hostile breach of contract. You must closely scrutinize their microexpressions and tone whenever your rivals experience a victory. Look for signs of hidden validation relief or a defense of the opponent's strategy. Most importantly, you must deliberately manufacture a sharp, polarized crisis that forces them to publicly choose between supporting your controversial stance or protecting the rival. By destroying their neutrality, you strip away their ability to act as a double agent, forcing them out into the open where they can be systematically managed before they can strike from the shadows. The fifth sign is the calculated insulation of responsibility during minor crises, the definitive preparation for a scapegoat architecture. A traitor who has already mentally decoupled from your survival will absolutely refuse to share the weight of any negative outcomes, choosing instead to quietly sacrifice your reputation to preserve their own pristine record. You will see this pattern play out during minor setbacks, operational failures, or public relations disputes. The individual will suddenly shift their communication style from casual verbal collaborations to highly formalized, rigid written paper trails. They will craft emails or internal documents filled with calculated defensive phrasing, designed to explicitly isolate your decisions from their compliance. They will embed subtle disclaimers like, "As per your direct instructions," or "While our team noted significant risks, we proceeded under your guidance." On the surface, it appears to be standard administrative diligence, but in the psychological dark arts, This is the construction of a legal and social shield. They are deliberately ensuring that when a major catastrophe occurs, their hands remain completely clean, while you take the full, devastating force of the shockwave. This allows them to step forward in the aftermath, not as a co-conspirator in failure, but as an innocent bystander or a competent savior ready to inherit your ruined territory. Machiavelli observed this inherent human cowardice and opportunism, writing that men will always prove untrue to you unless they are kept honest by necessity. When the necessity of shared survival is removed, the manipulator's immediate instinct is to throw you overboard to keep their own ship afloat. To re-anchor their accountability, you must enforce a strict regime of shared vulnerability. You must refuse to accept vague verbal agreements or casual assurances, demanding that every major strategic decision be explicitly backed by written joint sign-offs that legally and socially bind their name to the potential catastrophe. You must continuously monitor their behavioral response during minor operational stresses. If they instantly run for cover or shift the blame onto defenseless subordinates, rather than standing shoulder to shoulder with you, recognize that they have already drafted the script to sacrifice you when the real storm arrives. The sixth sign is the sudden execution of public quarantine mixed with private warmth, a highly sophisticated form of psychological gaslighting. You will find yourself trapped in a bizarre paradox where an associate remains deeply affectionate, highly cooperative, and intensely warm when you are interacting in absolute privacy. But the moment you enter the public arena, a cold, calculated distance emerges. In boardrooms, public forums, or social media spaces, they will avoid standing next to you, refuse to publicly endorse your controversial ideas, or remain completely silent when external forces launch an assault against your character. If you confront them in private, they will embrace you, offer comforting words, and explain that their public neutrality is a masterstroke of strategy designed to protect the alliance from total exposure. Do not fall victim to this deadly illusion. The dark psychology driving this behavior is the fear of social and political contagion. They have already detected that a powerful faction is moving to eliminate you, or they are actively participating in the plot themselves. They cannot afford to have the public or the ruling elite associate their brand with your collapsing matrix. They are keeping you warm in private to ensure you continue to share secrets and resources with them, but they are maintaining a clean public separation so that when the axe finally falls, they can instantly cross the floor to join the executioners without being accused of treason. Machiavelli deeply understood the absolute dominance of public perception over private reality, noting that the vulgar are always taken by appearances and the issue of the event. The crowd does not see their private text messages of support. The crowd only sees their public detachment. The moment your downfall is finalized, their transition to the winning side will look completely natural and justified to the external world. To shatter this quarantine, you must force their hand into the light of day. You must publicly invite them to co-sign a high-profile, highly polarized initiative, or demand that they speak first in defense of your position during a major public assembly. If they offer elaborate, defensive excuses to maintain their invisibility while swearing private devotion, you have exposed a traitor who is simply waiting for your corpse to cool before they claim their reward. The seventh warning sign is the systematic micro-testing of your boundaries and authority, a tactical reconnaissance campaign designed to measure your psychological decay. Massive betrayals are almost never impulsive, isolated events. They are preceded by a series of small, calculated acts of insubordination designed to test the sharpness of your instincts and the strength of your counterattack capabilities. This occurs when an associate deliberately misses a critical deadline by a few hours, conveniently forgets a direct, non-negotiable instruction, or deploys a highly passive-aggressive, sarcastic joke about your leadership capability in front of a group of mutual peers. If you choose to ignore these microaggressions to preserve artificial harmony, or to avoid looking overly sensitive, the manipulator logs this data as a massive strategic victory. They have successfully proven that your perimeter defenses are weak, your reactions have grown dull, and your fear of confrontation outweighs your commitment to your own sovereignty. The dark psychology behind this is identical to a military probing operation. The predator sends out small scouting parties to draw your fire and measure your response time. If you do not fire back, they know they can advance their forces with total impunity. Machiavelli spoke extensively about the absolute danger of allowing your respect to erode, noting that a leader who does not understand the art of vigilance cannot be respected by his followers, nor can he rely on them when the environment turns hostile. When you tolerate the slow, incremental erosion of your minor boundaries, you are literally inviting a major betrayal by demonstrating that you lack the internal will to defend your territory. To halt this psychological invasion, you must respond to microtesting with immediate, calibrated, and absolute precision. You must confront every single minor infraction, the exact split second it occurs, bringing the behavioral anomaly into sharp focus with a calm, freezing clarity. You must demand an immediate, measurable correction without offering excuses for them or allowing them to hide behind the defense of a joke. By enforcing an absolute price for crossing your micro boundaries, you signal to the potential traitor that your fortress remains fully garrisoned, forcing them to abort their subversive campaign before it can scale into a fatal assault. The eighth and final sign is the hidden construction of a parallel infrastructure, the ultimate indicators that the countdown to betrayal has reached its final seconds. A master manipulator operating under the Machiavellian framework will never sever their connection with you until they have fully constructed, tested, and verified an alternative framework that guarantees their continued survival and prosperity without you. In your daily life, this looks like a close associate who quietly duplicates your proprietary operating procedures, establishes secret direct relationships with your primary clients behind your back, or builds exclusive networks that completely bypass your influence. They are systematically downloading your operational blueprints, copying your structural mechanics, and redirecting your collective relational capital into a private, hidden reservoir that they own exclusively. They remain perfectly compliant, highly productive, and completely calm during this phase, because any conflict would disrupt the transfer of wealth. The exact moment their parallel infrastructure becomes self-sustaining, your utility to them drops to absolute zero, and the execution of the betrayal becomes a mere administrative detail. Machiavelli provided the definitive, timeless, structural solution to this ultimate vulnerability in Chapter 9 of The Prince, advising that a wise leader must think of a method by which his citizens will need the state and himself at all times and in every circumstance. Then they will always be loyal to you. In this single profound realization, Machiavelli strips away all moral illusions and exposes the absolute engine of human loyalty in competitive arenas. It is not affection. It is not historical gratitude. It is pure, unadulterated, structural necessity. Loyalty exists only when the alternative to loyalty is immediate ruin or unacceptable loss. When you allow an ally to systematically eliminate their operational necessity for your existence, you have effectively permitted them to write the blueprint for your execution. To protect your domain, you must maintain absolute sovereignty over the core architecture of your life. You must structure your systems so that no single individual possesses end-to-end access to your vital workflows without your direct intervention. You must maintain personal, non-transferable ownership of all macro relationships, primary assets, and legal keys, ensuring that you remain the irreplaceable bridge. Most importantly, you must continuously innovate and elevate your personal strategic capacity, ensuring that even if they successfully steal your past, they remain completely incapable of competing with your future. By making yourself structurally irreplaceable, you transform loyalty from a fragile emotional illusion into an absolute, non-negotiable law of survival for everyone around you. Looking back at these profound behavioral shifts, which of these patterns resonates most with your current environment or your past experiences? Share your insights in the comments below so we can analyze the dynamics together and strengthen our collective defensive intelligence. True mastery of the Machiavellian framework is never about weaponizing deception to harm the innocent or exploit the vulnerable. It is about cultivating a flawless clarity of vision to read the hidden undercurrents of human self-interest, ensuring you are never made a victim of your own innocence. By recognizing the masks of excessive flattery, monitoring the shifting balances of incentives, and enforcing your strategic boundaries with absolute precision, you elevate yourself from a helpless piece on the board into a powerful author of your own destiny. Protect your energy, master the rules of the game, and guard your trust with a warrior's vigilance. Stay strategic, stay ethical, stay powerful.